The day begins with the sea. Before the sun has even thought of breaching the horizon, the medieval port city of Kalehaven is already awake. Not with the chatter of markets or the clatter of carts, but with the deep, organic breath of the harbor itself. The water, black as polished slate, laps against wooden pilings worn smooth as bone by centuries of salt, friction, and endless patient pressure. Ropes thick as a man's wrist creak under the strain of holding giants captive. The ships, mere dark shapes against a darker sky, shift and sigh with the turning of the tide. Somewhere out in the channel, the night bell of the harbor buoy sounds its lonely, familiar note. It is not yet 4 in the morning. This is not a city built on land. It is a city built on the sea, from the sea, and for the sea. Its streets are liquid, its walls are waves, and its true sovereign is the moon, whose silent command pulls the very lifeblood of this place in and out twice a day. Forget kings and bishops. Here, power is measured in draft and tonnage, in favorable winds and the cunning to read them. Welcome to the machine of the medieval world. Welcome to the edge of the map. In the absolute dark, the waterfront is a realm of ghosts and silhouettes. The only lights are the bobbing orange eyes of tallow-dipped lanterns and the occasional guttering torch, their smoke mixing with the pre-dawn mist. This is the hour of the tide gangs. These men are not citizens in the usual sense. They are creatures of the wharf. Their language is the language of knots and currents. They move with a slow, rolling gait, legs perpetually braced against an invisible deck. They are loading the first tide lighters, broad, shallow barges that will ferry goods to ships waiting in the deep water anchorages at dawn. Their work is silent, efficient, and brutal. Sacks of wool from English monasteries, so heavy it takes 2 men to lift them. Barrels of Rhenish gold, the sharp white wine from upriver, tapped and tasted by the customs officer's apprentice. Rough-sawn Baltic timber, smelling of pine forests 1,000 miles away. They heave and roll by feel, their hands knowing the shape of every crate in the dark. One misstep, one dropped barrel of wine or olive oil, and a man could owe a debt he could never repay. The harbor gives, but it extracts a price for clumsiness. Out on the water, other shapes move. The night fishers are returning, their small, single-sail boats slipping like shadows through the channel. They've been out since midnight, laying and hauling nets by the light of the stars in a small clay lamp. Their catch, silvery herring, glistening mackerel, will be the first fresh food in the market. They speak in low murmurs, their eyes scanning the dark shapes of the larger merchant ships. A good fisherman knows every vessel in port. A new one could mean new rumors, new dangers, new opportunities. And aboard those great ships, the cog of Bremen, the galley of Genoa, men sleep fitfully. In hammocks slung between crates or on hard decks wrapped in tarred canvas, sailors dream of land, but their bodies still feel the roll of the open ocean. The watchman on deck isn't looking for enemies. He's listening. Listening to the mooring lines, hearing their tension change with the tide. Listening for the telltale scrape of a thief's boat against the hull. The harbor is never quiet and never safe. The air is a complex, layered broth. The sharp, clean scent of salt. The rich, fungal smell of wet hemp rope. The acrid tang of wood smoke from 100 hearths behind the seawall. And beneath it all, the profound, inescapable smell of decay, rotting fish, wet timber, and the tidal mud exposed at low tide, a reminder that the sea both gives life and takes it back. The sun does not so much rise as it bleeds into the eastern sky, turning the world from black to gray to a bruised, watery gold. With the first true light, the sea gate, a massive iron-shod portal in the city's maritime wall, groans open. This is the moment of legal transition. The nocturnal, shadowy work of the tide gangs is over. The official day of trade begins. The guards here are different from the city's inland sentries. They are saltbeards, older sailors given a sinecure, their eyes permanently narrowed from staring at horizons. They don't care about your name or your business, they care about your papers. The harbor ledger is opened, a massive tome where every ship's master, cargo manifest, and last port of call is recorded. A missing seal of vague description, and your ship stays anchored, costing you money with every passing hour. Bribery is common, but dangerous. The harbor master takes his cut, but he also answers to the city's merchants guild, and they value orderly profit above chaotic graft. Through the gate pours a human tide. Merchant factors, well-dressed and sharp-eyed, clutching their calculation beads, abeche. Ship's captains, bearing the rolled-up portolan sea charts of their voyages, longshoremen looking for a day's hire, and the sailors finally released from their floating prisons. Their walk is a stagger, legs unaccustomed to stable ground. They head not for churches or homes, but for the three things they've dreamed of for months: fresh bread, cheap wine, and the company of women who don't smell of tar and sweat. On the docks, the drama of first inspection unfolds. The city's tide tax collectors, accompanied by guild representatives, board the ships that arrived in the night. A cargo of Egyptian cotton is probed for hidden spices. A shipment of Icelandic dried cod is inspected for rot. The wine taster is a crucial official. His palate determines the tax tier for every barrel. His spittoon is a prized piece of harbor furniture. And then there are the silent cargoes. On a discreet wharf behind the custom house, a different kind of ship unloads. Slaves from the Black Sea ports, captives from Mediterranean raids. Their fate is not recorded in the main ledger, but in a separate, greasy book kept under the harbor master's floorboard. They are led away not through the bustling market, but through a narrow, guarded alley known as the Gullet. The city consumes all things. By mid-morning, the harbor district is a linguistic and sensory maelstrom. This is not a melting pot. It is a roaring, chaotic, glorious stew pot. Walk 10 feet and the language changes. Here, a group of Hanseatic traders from Lübeck, their Low German sharp and guttural, arguing over the price of Russian furs. There, a Venetian galley officer bargaining in rapid-fire Italian with a supplier of dried lentils and hardtack. A Moorish merchant from Al-Andalus, speaking a mix of Arabic and bastardized Spanish, displays intricate brass astrolabes to a fascinated, terrified crowd of locals. The linguists are the unsung kings of this chaos. Often former slaves, sailors, or the bastard children of foreign liaisons, they possess the rarest skill, the ability to bridge worlds. They don't just translate words, they translate intent, insult, and innuendo. A good linguist knows that a Norse trader's silence is a sign of contemplation, while a Genoese merchant's silence is a prelude to rage. They are paid exorbitantly, trusted by no one, and absolutely indispensable. A deal for 10,000 ducats of Flemish wool can hinge on the precise translation of a single word. In the Chandlery Row, the city's true infrastructure is sold. This is not for consumers, but for the ships themselves. Rope makers walk backwards, spinning hemp into cables thicker than a man's leg. Spar makers hew single enormous trees into perfect masts. The pitch kettles bubble day and night, their black, pungent smoke coating every building in a sticky glaze. Here, a captain buys not just goods, but survival. A flawed rope means a fallen sail. Bad pitch means a leaking hull. The Chandler's Guild is powerful, their guarantees sealed with wax and fear. And in tiny, grimy offices above the warehouses, the letter writers and money changers perform their alchemy. A sailor dictates a halting, emotional message to his mother in a Breton village. The writer turns it into flowing Latin script for a fee. The money changers behind iron grills weigh coins from 100 different mints. Byzantine solidi, Arabic dinars, Florentine florins. Their scales are the most precise instruments in the city. They determine the real exchange rate, not princes. A whispered rumor of a devalued currency here can topple a merchant house in Florence a month later. To understand the port, you must understand the ship. It is not just transportation, it is a floating castle, a warehouse, a prison, and a time capsule. Let's take the St. Nicholas, a cog from Hamburg. It arrived yesterday, its hold bursting with amber, wax, and timber. Now it is a wounded animal being healed. In the careening yard, it has been pulled onto its side at low tide. Teams of men scrape away a forest of barnacles and seaweed from its hull, a process called breaming. Then they burn the old pitch off with torches, the flames licking the wood. The smell is horrific. Finally, new sheets of hot, sticky pitch are applied, sealing the ship against the relentless sea. It is violent, dangerous maintenance. Men are burned, crushed, or fall into the tidal mud to drown. On its deck, the ship's carpenter is performing surgery. He taps every plank, listening for the hollow sound of rot. He examines the tree nails, the wooden pegs holding the hull together, for movement. His most important tool is a simple auger drill. A dry, easily turned hole means sound timber. A damp, resistant hole spells doom. Below deck, in the permanent twilight, the cooper is rebuilding barrels. The St. Nicholas will leave with French wine, and every barrel must be watertight. He works by feel and sound, shaving staves, fitting hoops. A single leaking barrel can sour an entire cargo, turning wine to vinegar and fortune to ruin. Meanwhile, the victualler is loading supplies. This is a science of preservation. Salted pork in brine, hard cheese sealed in wax, dried peas and beans, ship's biscuit, so hard it must be tapped with a hammer, and often crawls with weevils. Extra protein, the sailors joke darkly. And the most precious cargo, fresh water, in tight barrels. Water is life. Stale water means scurvy, dysentery, and mutiny. The ship is also a communications network. Sailors from the St. Nicholas share news with men from a Provençal carrack. The plague has broken out in Constantinople. The Sultan's fleet is massing in Alexandria. The price of pepper in Venice has doubled. This information is more valuable than silver. A merchant who hears it first can make or lose a fortune. Just beyond the realm of ropes and tar, the Grand Bazaar of Kalehaven explodes in a riot of color and scent. This is where the world's goods become personal. The Spice Quarter is a symphony of aromas that sting the eyes and ignite the imagination. Here, in small, precious mounds, are the smells of continents. Pepper, black gold, sold by the individual corn, cinnamon, shavings from mythical trees, saffron, more expensive, weight for weight than gold, ginger, clove, nutmeg. The spice merchant is part chemist, part magician. He guards his wares from dampness with sheets of waxed leather. He knows that the scent is the sale. He will let a wealthy matron sniff a pinch of crushed cardamom, watching her eyes close in transported delight. The cloth hall is a cathedral of texture. Heavy Flemish wool, dyed deep scarlet with madder root. Fine Italian silks, shimmering like water. Rough, undyed linen from the Baltic. Seal's wool from the far north, oily and waterproof. A tailor doesn't just sell cloth, he sells identity. The cut of a Venetian sleeve, the pattern of a Moorish robe. These are signals of wealth, connection, and worldly knowledge. But the true pulse of the city is in the food stalls. This is not gourmet dining, this is caloric engineering for a working population. Huge cauldrons of sailor stew bubble perpetually. a murky broth of fish heads, barley, onions, and whatever cheap vegetables are to hand. Harbor bread, a dense, dark loaf made from rye and pea flour, is sold by the chunk. Pickled everything, herring, eggs, cabbage, in barrels of sharp vinegar. And then there are the exotic treats, sugar, a rare luxury carved into hard cones, dried figs and dates from the south, almonds. For most citizens, these are not foods. They are tokens of a world beyond the gray sea and gray sky, glimpsed once a year if they are very lucky. The market is also a stage for crime. Cut purses work in teams, creating distractions. Duffer merchants sell oriental silk that turns out to be cheap linen painted with berry juice. The market wardens patrol, but their justice is transactional. They look the other way for a percentage of the take. The rule here is caveat emptor. Let the buyer beware. Your greed is your own responsibility. As the sun climbs to its zenith, the port reveals its darker arteries. The relentless pressure of work, the close quarters, and the fluidity of morality create a constant low-grade tension that periodically erupts. In the Sailor's Bethel, a makeshift chapel under a tarpaulin, a Franciscan friar offers Mass to a motley congregation of sailors about to depart. They pray with a desperate intensity land dwellers never muster. They know the statistics. 1 in 3 who leave on the winter tides may not return. They leave votive offerings, crudely carved ships, locks of hair, at the small shrine to St. Nicholas, patron of sailors, and St. Erasmus, who was martyred by having his intestines wound out on a windlass. Just around the corner in the Anchor's Rest Tavern, a different sacrament is observed. Here, men drink to forget what they have seen and to numb the fear of what's to come. The beer is weak, the wine is sour, but it is abundant. Fights are common but brief. The harbor guards break them up quickly, dragging offenders to the tide prison, a cage partially submerged in the harbor. A few hours in the cold salt water is a potent deterrent. This is also the hour of the crimps. These are the predators of the port. Their job is to supply ships with crew by any means necessary. They haunt the taverns, buying drinks for lonely sailors. When the man passes out, the crimp delivers him to a captain desperate for hands. The sailor will wake up at sea indebted for the credit of the drinks, bound to a ship for months or years. It is a form of legalized kidnapping that the authorities tacitly endorse. A ship cannot sail without men. And for the wealthy, the afternoon is for business of a different kind. In the Merchants' Exchange, a vaulted hall overlooking the harbor, deals are made that will dictate the price of wool in Bruges or the availability of alum, essential for fixing dyes, in Florence. Here, contracts are sealed not just with signatures, but with God's penny, a silver coin broken in half, each party keeping a piece. The word of a merchant is his bond, for his reputation is the only thing that travels faster than his ships. The sea does not care for human schedules. As the afternoon wanes, the tide reaches its high slack, the brief, still moment between the flood and the ebb. This is a moment of collective pause in the harbor. The frantic loading stops. Men straighten their backs, wiping sweat with filthy forearms. It is also the moment when the weather decides the fate of ships and men. All eyes turn to the weather witch, an old woman, often the widow of a drowned captain, who lives in a shack on the breakwater. She reads the clouds, the behavior of gulls, the color of the water, and the ache in her bones. Captains pay her in wine and salt for her prognosis. The wind will back to the northeast by midnight, she might croak. This intelligence is priceless. A ship leaving on a falling tide with a favorable wind gains a day's advantage. A ship caught in the estuary by a contrary wind could be grounded for a week. With the decision made, the outbound ships begin their final preparations. Last-minute cargo is secured. Families of the crew come to the dockside for final, tearful farewells. The ship's priest gives a final blessing, sprinkling holy water on the prow. There is a palpable shift in energy, from the chaotic absorption of the port to the focused tension of departure. On the incoming side, the inbound ships that have been waiting for the tide now make their final graceful approach. Pilots, local sailors with knowledge of every sandbar and current, climb aboard to guide them through the treacherous channel. It is a dance of supreme skill. A missed command, a misjudged current, and hundreds of tons of wood and wealth can be smashed against the rocks. The pilot's fee is high, but his value is incalculable. And as the light turns golden, the lamplighters begin their work. They don't light street lamps, but the harbor lights, oil lanterns placed at the end of each major jetty and on the breakwater. These are not for beauty, but for survival. They create a constellation that guides nighttime arrivals and keeps the drunk from stumbling into the water. In a world without lighthouses, this man-made galaxy is the difference between safe harbor and a grave. With the fall of darkness, the port's personality splits in two. Along the main docks, the official city sleeps. Warehouses are locked with massive iron locks whose keys are held by the guild masters. The customs house is closed. The respectable merchants retire to their stone houses on the hill, where the air smells of garden herbs, not fish. But in the low side, the tangle of alleys between the wharves, the port's second life awakens. This is the domain of those who live in the margins. The sailors with a few coins left, the longshoremen paid for the day, the out-of-work fishermen. Taverns like the Drunken Dolphin and the Mermaid's Kiss overflow. Here music is not refined but loud and rhythmic. A drum, a flute, a battered lute. The songs are of legendary voyages, of sea monsters, of lovers in every port. The stories told are epic, unbelievable, and absolutely vital. They are how men process the terror and wonder of a life at the edge of the world. This is also where information of a different sort is traded. In shadowy corners, rumor mongers sell whispers. Which customs officer is lax this week? Which ship is carrying undeclared silver? Where is the naval patrol? This intelligence network is the nervous system of the shadow economy. And in the upstairs rooms, the seamstresses and bawds conduct their business. For a sailor who has been months at sea, female companionship is not a luxury, but a profound human need. The transactions are brisk, devoid of romance, but often tinged with a strange transactional kindness. These women are also informants, healers, and lenders of last resort. When the bell of the cathedral tolls 12, the legal port is dead. The real port comes alive. This is the time for the moonlight trade, smuggling. Small, black-hulled boats with muffled oars slip between the anchored ships. Cargo is transferred silently. Barrels of untaxed wine, bundles of fine wool without the guild seal, banned books, prohibited weapons. The night watchmen are often complicit, paid to look the other way, or they are terrifyingly vigilant, their loyalty bought by the city council with promises of a share of the confiscated goods. On the graveling beach and where ships are beached for repair, another ritual occurs. The wreckers gather. These are not the murderous savages of legend who lure ships onto rocks. In Kalehaven, they are a licensed guild. When a ship is damaged beyond repair, they have the right to pick its carcass clean. At midnight, by torchlight, they swarm over a condemned caravel, stripping it of every usable piece of iron, copper, rope, and timber. It is an eerie, fascinating spectacle, the dissection of a great beast. By dawn, only the skeleton of the hull will remain. And out in the harbor, on the decks of the ships, the men on the mid-watch stand their lonely vigil. They are the city's unsung sentinels. They watch for fire, the most terrifying disaster, for thieves, for changes in the weather. To stay awake, they sing quiet shanties or talk of home in low tones. They are the connective tissue between the sleeping city on land and the vast sleeping world of the sea. In this silent hour, they are the most alone and the most essential people in the world. The dark is absolute once more, but it is a different dark. It is a dark pregnant with the coming dawn. The night bell buoy sounds again, but now it feels less like a warning and more like an invitation. On the eastern horizon, a thin, razor-sharp line of palest green appears. The green flash sailors sometimes speak of, a myth to most, but hoped for by all, a sign of good luck. In the bakehouse by the sea, the ovens are lit. The first bread of the new day will be for the tide gangs who are already stirring, their bodies aching from yesterday's labor, but moving anyway, driven by habit and need. A new ship has appeared on the horizon during the night, a speck of sail caught in the first blush of dawn. Where is it from? What does it carry? What news does it bring? It does not matter. The harbor is ready, the ropes are coiled, the ledgers are open, the linguists are stretching their vocal cords. The mint is warming its scales, the tide is turning. Again, the machine never stops. The sea never sleeps. The city, this glorious, greedy, brutal, magnificent engine of the medieval world, takes a deep breath of salt air and opens its arms once more. For this is not a place, it is a process, a perpetual negotiation between land and water, safety and risk, the known and the unknown. Every wave that breaks against its stones whispers the same truth. Nothing is permanent, everything is in flux, and the only constant is the tide itself, pulling all things forever and ever back to the sea.